So we've all been there. You want to break free of the confines of your textbook and get into, well, native level stuff. Comic books, poems, short stories, all written for native Japanese speakers. So you run out and grab the first volume of manga you can get on eBay, and what do you know? It's too hard. So you Google children's book PDFs and you look through them and you can finish one in like 10 minutes. And it's either way too easy or just doesn't work yourself hard enough. How do you approach a lifelong habit of reading in a foreign language? Well, let's get into it. According to a very brief Google search I have here at the University of Albany, that they suggest a child read 20 minutes more than what he normally gets at school every single day to become a proficient reader in adulthood. Now, I don't know if that's true, but if it is true, that means we should all expect to have a kid read roughly 70 minutes a day, including their reading time in class and then that extra 20 minutes outside of school time. Becoming a non-stuttered, comprehensive, and most of all fluent reader is essential to language learning. I mean, think about it. It's half of the language intake that we have. It's ears and eyes. And it's also just hella cool to bring a girl home and have bookshelves full of foreign books. But in most people's minds, they think that's an impossible task. They think they're too old, or that they don't have the language learning bug, and that, oh, it took me 20 years to learn to read in English. I don't want to put that into something else. And that's not exactly accurate. Technically, because you're already fluent in one language, you're gonna have a lot of crossover skills in that first one that'll make the second one easier. What do I mean by this? Reading isn't just going from word to word and knowing apple means apple. Reading is an entire skill set, and I have just a brief list here. Things from skimming, summarizing, speed reading, problem solving. I mean, it's just a massive list, and these are all skills that we already have in English. Anyone who went to college knows how to skim a text. So since we already have that skill in our native language, it's gonna cut down on the time it takes to learn to read in a second, because you're not learning just the skills. Really, it's breaking down to two more or less skills. Speed, the rate at which you can read a page, and comprehension, which kind of goes into your own separate study schedule of learning words and what have you. Alright, so how do we get those going in the second language? Well, the first one is you need to be good at speed. I mean, after all, it doesn't matter if you can understand 100% of what's on a page if it takes you 3 hours to read that page. The second thing we can do to kind of help ourselves do this is matching reading levels accurately. You don't want it to be too easy and to fly through it and to get nothing out of it, but you don't want it to be so hard that it feels like you pulled your back trying to read the last paragraph. So how do we go about doing this? We're gonna need varied topics, varied authors, and varied levels. Let's start with levels. You pick up a manga and you go, oh, this is for kids. I'll be able to read this, and you open it up, and what do you know? Oh, that's a cute picture. And what do you know? It is almost entirely idiom, slang, and things that you just can't figure out. Likewise, you pick up a children's book like this, and there's maybe a sentence every single page. Not exactly intellectually stimulating. Or if you've lived in Japan, you go to a shopping center, you almost feel like you're gonna drown in the kanjis on the signs all around you. Levels are important. Now, I actually have 3 examples of texts here that I personally use, and I'm gonna show you guys kind of how I use these in my daily routine. The first level is your easiest level. For me, this is something like manga. There are things with pictures that build the world around it, so I don't have to worry about building that in my head necessarily, and it's relatively easy in its context. We're not talking about physics, we're talking about a kid that transforms into an angel and fights crime. What do I mean by easy? Easy's simple enough. From 0 understanding to 100% understanding per page, per chapter, per book. I say easy means that you should not have to look at a dictionary or look up anything and still be able to get the gist of the text. You may not know all the details, but you can follow the story, what's happening, why it's happening, who's doing what, and you don't need to have a dictionary to understand that stuff. For me, from nothing to fully up here, it's probably somewhere in the 70% range. And I set a goal. You could do it on pages, on time, on anything that you want. I typically read these for either a chapter or 20 minutes a day, depending on which one's longer. It's usually the 20 minutes. The next thing that you're gonna want is a book that meets your reading level. Whereas the last one was easy, you're able to read it and get everything that's happening without a dictionary. This book, you're probably gonna have to look up 5 or less things every single page. And that could be grammar or vocab, but those are things that if you didn't have it, it would be tough to understand. Now here's the real balancing act. You don't want it to be more than 10 words per page, because then you're just missing out on so much. But if you can get it to where every single page of this book, you can get 5 or less things outside the book and then understand what's happening to the same level of your easy thing, that's this level. I also do about 20 minutes here, but these I do specifically based on chapters. I like full pictures because I'm trying to read more stories that don't have pictures for the most part. And so if I end halfway through a story, sometimes I can lose that mental image. So I tend to read full chapters. Now the final book needs to be one of two things or both. If you're crazy like I was, you either need some sort of written text with a lot of written spoken dialogue. So things like manga, which I'm going back to my easy one. There's a clear difference between these two sentences in English, for instance. I hate that versus he looked at her, hate in his eyes, threw the bowl viscally out of his hand and said, I hate that. You see how those two are different? It's conveying the same image. But whereas the manga would convey the rest of that with pictures, say this book, you would have to get that entirely from the text. So the first one in the hard series is going to be spoken because they use a lot of idioms and they use a lot of slang and they use kind of a butchering of the language, honestly. It's obviously not textbook Japanese, it's very not correct, as my English was there. But it's stuff you gotta learn, because when you speak a language, languages aren't spoken perfectly even by native speakers. We butcher it all the time. That's why we have dab on the haters and swag and all sorts of just awful, awful things. Now what's the other option if you don't want to just do spoken stuff? Or maybe you want to be more scholastic in your reading. You need to find something that is hard to read. So with the same mechanics of easy, your level, and hard. Easy is where you can understand probably 70 to 80% of it without needing to look up anything. Your levels, you probably need to look up 5 or less things per page to be able to have a functioning understanding. Not a perfect, but a functioning. Hard would be you probably need to look up 10 or more things per page in order to have a functioning understanding. This is Umi to Dokuyaku by Endo. He's one of my favorite kind of contemporary Japanese authors. This book is insane. This is actually my favorite. I know I go back to this book a lot because it's just awesome. This and Some Prefer Nettles. But as you can see, it is a difficult book. Even I need to look up about 10 words per page here. Well, Chad, if you're working so hard, do you actually learn anything with the language with this book? No, and that's okay. You're not reading to learn Japanese. You're reading to become a better reader of Japanese. And frankly, why is it important to read stuff that's hard for you if you don't understand it? Well, because it exposes you to this hard stuff without relying on it for language learning. Picture reading like a muscle, because skill sets are like muscles. If you play Magic the Gathering every day, you will get good at Magic the Gathering. If you stop playing for a few years, you will suck at Magic the Gathering. If you read, you are working out actively your reading muscle. So how do you get better at reading? You work it, and you can work out with very light weights, and that'll get you, pretty far. You can work on relatively easy stuff and go a certain distance, but you'll hit a point where you won't grow anymore reading easy things. So, just like in weightlifting, how do you get yourself to be stronger? You don't increase the reps, the amount of books that you read that are easy. You actually decrease your reps. You bring the time that you're spending reading or the amount of pages you're reading down and increasing the weight, increasing the difficulty level of the text. There's only so many 5-pound curls you can do before your body goes, yeah, we're not going to grow anymore. And it's the same thing with these books. So a lot of people thinking, oh, well, if I read harder, I'll get better quicker, or maybe with lifting weights, oh, I'm going to lift heavier and then I'll get stronger faster. If you do that, first off, you're going to hurt yourself. You're going to fry your brain. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to throw the book away, burn the garbage that it's in, and give up. But if you don't rely on this to learn the language, but have other sources to do that, then all this is doing is making you a better reader. You're gonna go word to word, sentence to sentence, paragraph to paragraph, faster and faster. And just like if you want to get faster at running, you time yourself. When I was starting to read this book, all I did was I took a page and I timed myself on how long it took me to read it. Even if I didn't understand, it wasn't about that. Then the next day when I would try and read that same page, I would just want to be a second faster. And the next day, a second faster. And the next day, a second faster. Eventually, I got pretty quick at reading these books. In fact, I can read Japanese pretty close to my native English reading speed. Not my comprehension, but my native English speed, which is awesome because that means I could take in more information faster, shortening the process of language learning. I could go on for hours on the various different techniques you can do for reading, but if you can find 3 books that take you to what I was saying, easy, your level, and difficult for you to understand, and or a lot of spoken dialogue, and you do that over a long period of time, steadily, daily, you're gonna be a hell of a reader. And then you can get yourself that super swanky bookcase and bring girls over and impress them and woo them with the Japanese that they don't understand. Because at the end of the day, isn't that what this is all for? To get women. If you guys like this video, like it down below, comment any sort of questions, comments, concerns, or compliments that you guys have. I actually do want to hear legitimately from you on that last end, because if this is something that you guys like, if you enjoy specifically this reading topic, I might do an in-depth show you guys of what I do when I read. maybe I'll do a live stream or do some sort of special Patreon video. But if you guys would be interested in more reading stuff, let me know in the comments down below. Also, if you guys enjoyed this content, check out my other content. I have videos on the best beginner Japanese sources for reading and for listening, and for all sorts of fun stuff. I have like over 250 videos just waiting for you free of charge. You go through those videos, you go, hey, this Chad guy isn't the worst thing I've ever seen. Consider subscribing. Hit that subscribe button down below. I put out 3 videos a week. I do a Saturday live stream where you can ask me anything you need. I do a Wednesday video that has to do with Japan, Japanese culture, Japanese language, all that fun stuff. And a Monday podcast, which is on a separate channel. All right, that's it for this week. You guys, I will see you on the Saturday live stream. Love hard, love deep, and be kind to one another.